All right, so today I'm checking a Clark Orbital Center to see if the fan inside this housing that blows the air up into the bag is damaged. Okay, there's a tube that goes on there, so here's the tube, and then there's a bag that attaches to that tube. So, when you see it assembled, you'll see that with this, only it'll have a bag on this end, okay? I have reason to believe that it might possibly have gotten damaged. The reason is because the housing, this part here, moves much too easily. And when this moves, it can go right into the impeller blade and break off blades. So to check it, I do a couple things at first. First of all, depending on the extent of the damage, there could be other things that are damaged too. The fan, here's the motor, okay? So the motor this is the motor right here. It has a cap on the end of the motor. It's a standard, motor that they put on Clark's. There's actually a ventilation on top of this motor, and there's a fan inside the motor also that draws air through the motor to keep it running cool. Now I checked these bolts here to see if they were affected, and they weren't. They're actually in register. There's actually 3 of them, okay? So I checked those. You can kind of look under here too and see that this cap actually attaches to a part that's further up here, and that should actually be solid. I mean, it should not be moving like that. So what I do is I take a little piece of wood here, I jam it into the base to make sure that this base cannot rotate. Then I set it upright. Set it upright, and then I'm going to go through here and I'm going to check in here. I'm going to try to rotate. There's actually veins inside of here. You can kind of see them. I don't know if you can see them on camera here very well, but if you move those, the blade for the fan, this is the fan that actually draws the air up from the base right here through these tubes into the housing and out into the bag. That's the filter, okay? So you should not be able to move the impeller in here also. So I'm going to check that real quick and I'll come back on camera. Okay, so getting back to it here, the fan on the inside, as I mentioned, you shouldn't be able to move the blades when the base is jammed by this board right here, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and stick this in here, see if that moves, and I'm going to try to grab one of the impellers. It's actually easier to do it once it's off, but I'm just going to see initially what I'm up against. And it appears that this does not move. So the fan is registered with the shaft that is in there. And you're going to see that shaft a little bit here once I pull it apart, okay? So the next thing that I do is I just go ahead and get these guys off of here, and then I just blast these. There's actually 4 Phillips head screws that hold. Okay, so as I started to say, there's actually 4 Phillips head screws that hold it to the section that's right above the motor fan, 3 and 4. So I'm going to take those loose, I'm going to lift the lid off, and then you're actually going to see the fan after I've done that. Okay, so now it's time to lift the lid off. I've taken the screws out now, so all 4 screws are removed out of here. Now this lid is actually jammed onto there. There's an insulator that holds this onto here because it has to be airtight for it to be able to draw air through here, go through the fan, and then blow it up. So it's a little bit tight. So usually what I'll do is I'll just take a crowbar and I'll just kind of work it loose. It's kind of like that there. Try to, work it against the base there. And then it should be able to lift up here. You just got to kind of work it loose, and then eventually it'll come up. You don't want to get it all at once on one side. You want to kind of work it from both sides. So now the mistake that a lot of people make with these things is a lot of times they'll put pressure on here, or it'll fall on here, and then it'll crush the fan. It'll actually go through the screws, because this is just plastic. It's ABS plastic. It's not really heavy duty. It's not even ABS. It's like neoprene plastic, and it'll it'll end up crushing that fan. And, it's like a $44 fan. So, but it's critical to drawing the dust up and putting it in its in a dust bag. Otherwise, you won't get that happening. So, I'm gonna go ahead and do this. Now, when you put it back on, you want to make sure that those screw holes are registered with the screws around the base of that. And you'll see in a second what I mean by that. There it is. Okay, looks like the fan's in good shape. Now, the one thing I was concerned with was, no, it's actually attached to the base. So it appears that there was no damage to the fan. Now, if there was, the procedure is very simple. I come in here, there's a little keeper in here. You have to get those little snap ring pliers. There's the holes right here for the snap ring, okay? You put it in there, you take the snap ring off, and then there is a key that registers this to the shaft. You take the key out, and then you should be able to lift it up. If you can't lift it up, you'll have to actually get under there and pry it up. If the fan's broken, it doesn't matter. You can break the fan off and everything. But if it's not broken, and you still want to remove it, you want to look at the fan underneath, then you're going to have to carefully, get it from one side to the other, wedge it up the shaft, and then eventually it'll come up the shaft. And that's how to check to see if that impeller right there, that fan, that's the top fan, that's the one that blows the air from the base through these tubes, up through the cap, and into the bag. That's the fan that you want to check. Now, there is a fan underneath there, which is for the motor fan, but if this fan's not damaged, that fan is not damaged either, more than likely. So thanks for watching the video. Oh yes, so I did want to continue here. Okay, so apparently the fan's not damaged, and that's a good thing, because that's a lot of times that's what happens when that cap moves. But this part here appears that it's not attached to the piece below it. So these things really vibrate all the heck when you're using them. So there's a few screws that hold this part onto the base, the motor part, and that's actually the screw that worked out. Now, when you put hardware back in here, it's always a good idea to use Loctite so that stuff doesn't back out, because that's apparently what happened here. So I am going to go ahead and go through the due diligence of taking this fan. All right, as I started to say, I'm going to go ahead and take this off. So I'm going to have to take the snap ring off, pull it up, and then I'm going to secure those screws. There's probably a screw is probably missing, so I'm going to have to get a screw to secure, this base part here that's moving. So it appears that my snap ring pliers are broken, so I'm going to go about it another way. All right, here's the problem. I've got a snap ring on this shaft, and I've got to get it off of here to get this fan up, okay? The snap ring pliers that I have, this little piece right here is broken off. It doesn't have that little tab. So I'm going to have to do a workaround, okay? And I don't want to have to go and get that piece real quick. I want to just take it off. I'll get the piece to replace it, but for now, I just want to take it off, so I'm going to have to do something to get that off. I'm going to use a magnet. Okay, this is a magnet, the magnetic head here, okay? And I'm going to use 2 screwdrivers, okay? Basically, the magnetic head, probably zoom in on what I'm doing here, okay? I put the magnetic head right on there. As you can see, this is the opening for the snap rings, okay? And here, I'll move this out of here so I can actually rotate it. This is the opening for the snap rings right here, okay? And I'm just going to go ahead and put these in between the little fingers. Whoops. Put these in between the little fingers. It should actually get attracted to the magnet, and then it'll be jammed at that point, and then I could hopefully lift it out of there. Otherwise, I have to have 3 hands to do this. And oh, it's actually, well, it actually did come up. I was lucky. I had a keeper in here too, so I'm able to actually jam it underneath there. But it's just kind of an alternative way of doing it. Okay, so I have the keeper out of there now. That's it right there. I'm going to put that someplace safe so I don't lose it. Now, there is a wedge in here that actually wedges that fan in there. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to wedge the fan a little bit, work it to be able to get that out of there. So I'll come back on camera once I've done that. Okay, so now I have to use a minimal amount of force to get this fan off the shaft, but it's more force than what I could do with a screwdriver pushing from underneath. So what I did was I just got a 3-jaw puller, which I already had in my tool set, and you don't even really have to do it hard. You just have to get it on there so that it's pulling on all 3 sides, and the hub of this already has a hole for a puller. So apparently that's how they do it at the factory or any service technician. And I'm just going to pull it up that way, and it's comes up pretty easy, I guess. Seems like it's coming up pretty easy. Okay, so I've got it to that point now, and I should be able to lift the rest of it out by hand. Just kind of work it out, I guess. So eventually, by working it side to side, I'll be able to work that off the shaft. But to get the initial part popped up, because as you can see now, this is actually recessed below there. To get the initial part popped up, I had to use that puller. So now I'm going to go ahead and work it up. And let me see if I can do that by hand while I've got it live on camera. Yeah, it appears to be going. It's a very, very slow process. Here it comes. Here it comes. I keep saying that. Okay, so it's worked its way off of there. The keeper's actually in here. Here's the metal keeper that goes into that slot. So as you can see, that metal keeper goes into that slot, and then it slots down the side of the shaft. So that's the part that came loose. Okay, so I got this off. There's no apparent damage to this, which is a good thing. So I'm going to just set this aside. And now I'm just going to check these guys. This is the one that's loose right here. So, yeah, it's apparently come loose. So I'm going to have to get off the. There's actually a bushing right here that attaches to this. So I'm going to get these guys off. These are lock washers up here. I don't know how it worked its way loose. Oh, it must have been the guard underneath this that came loose. So I'm going to go ahead and work those 3 loose. I'm going to lift it up. I got another keeper right here that I have to get out. Okay, got to get that off the shaft. And once I do that, I'll lift that up, and then I'll be able to tighten down the motor, the end piece for the motor, and that's what came loose. And that should tighten up the whole works. So I'll be back on camera here. Okay, so I've got these 2 screws we're holding it on. This screw is actually broken. I can feel it underneath here. It actually sheared off. So I'm going to just go ahead and pull this up. Now there is a keeper right here. I probably should get that off before I do that. So I'm going to go through the due diligence of getting that off, and then I'm going to lift that up. Okay, so now I've got the nuts off of there. I've taken the keeper out of here. Okay, so this guy, this is the one that's broken. So this guy lifts out of there now. Now you can see this is stuck in here. So what happened was it actually sheared, and luckily it did not affect the fan in this. There's actually a fan in here. It didn't affect that fan. It didn't shatter it or anything. So I was very, very lucky that didn't happen. So now I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to have to reset this up. I'm going to probably have to get an end piece, get one of these end pieces here, and replace it. So that's as far as we go, and that's as far as you should have to go. If you have any piece that's rattling on this machine, or anything that came loose, or maybe the top got pushed down, that's as far as you're going to have to go, because you won't be going into the motor. Because, I mean, those motors are virtually indestructible. I haven't seen one fail yet. I mean, there's always a first time, but those are very heavy-duty motors. Unless unless they've seen like 10 years of solid use, about the worst thing you're going to end up doing is replacing the brushes in the motor, possibly. But anything aside from that, you're not really going to have an issue with that. So, thanks for watching the video. Oh yeah, so to get this off, there's actually hex nuts on the side here. I pointed those out earlier, and I'm going to loosen those little hex nuts right there. Okay, I'm going to loosen those, and then there's 3 of them, and I'm going to take that cap off. And I'll just end up replacing this cap is what I'll end up doing, because that shaft here is actually attached to there, and as you can see, it got a little bit damaged there. So I'll end up replacing that, and that's it for now. Thanks for watching.